Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, which is about preparing for your revalidation. Hello, my name's Wendy Fowler. I'm a nursing education advisor here at the NMC. I'm a registered nurse, and I'll be going through the presentation. My colleagues, Sue West, who's the senior education advisor, and Stephanie Kager-Watson, who is a Senior Registration and Revalidation Officer at the NMC, will be joining me for the question part a little bit later. So, welcome. As I said, a short presentation and then an opportunity to ask questions. Actually, you can ask questions at any point during this webinar. Just click on that orange arrow at the top left-hand corner of your screen. Pop your question in the question box, and we'll collate these. In fact, my colleague, the fourth person here, is Mohammed Parker, who'll be collecting those questions, and we'll look at them all together at the end. And just really on the subject of questions, I firmly believe there is no such thing as a daft question. They're the ones I like the best. So, the story so far, haven't we come a long way from the Shape of Caring review, introducing that idea of nursing associates supporting the delivery of nursing care, leading to nursing associates being a profession in your own right. Yeah, providing a progression route into graduate level nursing degree programs if you want, but also a profession in its own right, loud and proud, I say. This is in England only, so this just applies to folk in England. And the first of you will be revalidating for the first time in January next year, which is quite soon, and I think it's a really exciting time. So hopefully this presentation and the questions and answers will help you get your head around the idea of revalidation. So just a short few words about what we do here at the NMC for regulation of nursing associates. Right at the heart, right in the middle there, you can see better, safer care. I think we can all agree that's something we all want. And the standards of proficiency, scope of practice, revalidation and the code all supporting that. So, what is revalidation? So every 3 years, at the point of the renewal of registration, nurses, midwives and nursing associates show that as a professional they're living by the code standards of practice and behaviour. Participation in revalidation is an ongoing thing. This reflects the 3 years since you joined the register. You need to meet a range of requirements, and I'll be talking through those. These are designed to show that you're keeping yourself up to date, practicing safely and effectively. It's about promoting good practice for everyone, nurses, midwives and nursing associates. Just a few things. Revalidation is not. It's not an assessment of a nurse, midwife, or nursing associate's fitness to practice, and it's not a way that fitness to practice concerns are raised either. There is a process for that, and revalidation isn't what that is. The code is absolutely central to everything we do as nurses, midwives, and nursing associates. It shows good nursing, midwifery and nursing associate practice. And there's those 4 themes, which I'm sure you're all aware of, all hanging together, offering public protection. A reminder of the nursing associate proficiencies. I'm sure you're all very familiar with these. While I'm talking about these today, when we're talking about revalidation, is these really do serve as a helpful reminder of what you might want to think about when you're doing your revalidation. Maybe a prompt on what study you might like to do. Maybe it may prompt a reflection about your practice, or make you think, actually, that's a skill I want to develop further. So I think having these here is helpful, and as you're going to prepare for your revalidation, it'd be worthwhile having a read through. It might just trigger something off in your mind about, this is something I want to find out more about, or something I think, oh, I've made real progress on that. I'm going to capture that as part of my revalidation. So here it all is. If you wanted it all in one slide, that's the one. So 450 practice hours is what we expect. So if you're working a 37.5-hour full-time week, that's what, 3 months, something like that. So how to capture that? There is a log in the on the website which asks us to record our practice hours. You do not have to record every single shift. I've done a sample week. This is what my normal week looks like, and then evidenced that I was working 30 hours a week by my payslip. And that's something you could do, or your contract, or something that would show the hours that you work. Continuing professional development, 35 hours, of which 20 will be participatory. And I think it's worthwhile just having a little chat about what the difference is between participatory and non-participatory. So because you've got those 15 hours which can be non-participatory. I'll talk about that first. So that 15 hours of non-participatory CPD. This could be something you've read, some e-learning that you've done by yourself, an article that you've read and thought, yes, this is something that's going to make me do things differently. So that's study that you've done by yourself. The participatory CPD, folk often get their head around the idea this has to be in a classroom, it has to be a formal teaching or a course. Some of you have probably done some preceptorship, and in which case that sort of thing will count absolutely towards your CPD. But other things will as well. Let me give you a for instance. If your place of work has a new policy and a number of you at work get together and think about how this is going to change our working practices. You've recorded that in some way, you've kept minutes, maybe you've even written a reflection about what it means to you and what you've learned. That would certainly be participatory CPD because you've done it with others. That CPD needs to be relevant to your practice as a nursing associate, and you need to be able to relate it to the code. 5 pieces of practice related feedback. This feedback may be something which is verbal. If you can record that verbal feedback. I can remember one of my verbal feedbacks was a patient seeing me across the car park, and he went, "Oi, you're all right, you are." And there was quite a backstory to that person, which meant that he trusted me, and that was a big deal. And I wrote a reflection on that. So that could be, that definitely was practice-related feedback. You're probably all having annual appraisals. You probably got 3 of those over the last 3 years. That would certainly be practice-related feedback. And then your written reflective accounts, 5 pieces of reflection. This could come from your CPD, something you've studied, from your feedback, or from something from practice that's happened that you think, oh, I've really learned from that. Capture that as a written reflective account, be it something that happened that went well, that didn't go so well, whatever. It's the reflection. And what's most important about your reflection is what you've learned from that. What happened, what you've learned from it, what you're going to do differently next time, how that relates to the code. And you'll also be having a reflective discussion and a confirmation. And I'm going to talk a bit more in detail about that. 2 other things: health and character and professional indemnity arrangement. This is also part of your revalidation. You need to provide that health and character declaration, including declaring any police charges, cautions, convictions, conditional discharges, or any other decisions, determinations from another regulatory body. Also, you need to declare that you have or will have, if you're just about to come back into practice, a professional indemnity arrangement. Usually this is held by your employer unless you work solo. So just find out from your employer a little bit about that. It might be something that's quite interesting to read. So your reflective discussion is face-to-face whenever possible, and must be with a fellow registrant, nurse, midwife or nursing associate who is currently on the register. This can be done as part of your appraisal, but it doesn't have to be. And there is that particular form, the blue one that you can see on the screen there, that records that you've had this discussion. Now, the reflective discussion can be just a really powerful thing to have with another registrant, discussing those 5 reflective pieces and really a bit of a deep dive into what happened there. And certainly, I think for your first revalidation, that can be something that can be tremendously rewarding, thinking, look how far I've come, thinking about your growth, thinking about your development, thinking about how you perhaps coped with a challenging situation or did something completely different to you've ever done before. It really can be quite an exciting thing to do. You also need your confirmation. So this needs to be demonstrated to an appropriate person that you've met the revalidation requirements. Your confirmer confirms that you've demonstrated you've met the requirements for revalidation, doing all the things I've just talked about. Usually this is your line manager. And it's very easy and straightforward if your line manager is another registrant, because you can have your reflective discussion and your confirmation, but they don't have to be. Your reflective discussion does. And it's for you to decide who would be the most appropriate person for this role. Now, when do you revalidate? Your revalidation application date is the first day of the month in which your registration expires. It's different from your renewal date. You must submit your revalidation application by this date, so there's time to process it. Your renewal date is the last date in the month in which your registration expires. You can submit your application up to 60 days before your revalidation application date. And for those of you who are revalidating on the 1st of January, I asked Siri when 60 days before that was, and it is Tuesday the 2nd of November. That's when the window opens, the window in which that you can revalidate. It's quite, you can think of it like that. You do also need to pay your fee as part of that revalidation application. You make that application via NMC Online. You complete an online form and declare that you have met the revalidation requirements. You've done everything that you're supposed to do. You don't upload any evidence from your portfolio, and you don't send us your portfolio or anything like that. Your portfolio is yours. What you do is you declare that you've done it. It's a good idea to print a summary of that application and pop it in your portfolio for your records. So if we don't look every portfolio, but each year there is a process of verification, and a sample of registrants will be asked to provide additional information demonstrating that they've met the requirements. If selected, it doesn't mean that we've got any concerns about your application or your practice or anything like that. So you can just carry on as normal. You will be notified immediately after submitting your application and then asked to provide those additional details. also contacting the confirmer to provide information about their side of the activity. So make sure that your confirmer is aware, because if they don't respond, that could really be a problem for you. Your registration won't lapse whilst all this is happening, but won't actually be renewed until that verification process is complete. What do I have to do? What do you have to do? Sign up for NMC Online if you haven't done already. Get that revalidation date. Get it written large in your calendar. Read the guidance and support information on our website. Start thinking now about who your reflective discussion partner will be and who your confirmer will be. What's not to do is don't panic. Don't worry, it's not as hard as it may appear at first. So be prepared, but don't panic. The revalidation pages on the website, there they are. Lots of things to look at. That revalidation handbook has got lots and lots of information. I look at mine quite regularly. There's also revalidation stories. They are quite helpful to read because they look at things from the revalidator's perspective. So have a read of those, even if you think, hang on, this is a midwife. I've actually found some really interesting information from people with other specialties, because we're all revalidating against the same code. It's time for your questions now. If you've been typing questions in, Hamid will be collecting those, and we'll go through all of those now. So thank you. I'll leave that screen up.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, we've had a few through, and we'll give people a bit of time to type up their questions, as I'm sure they're doing. I guess the first one that's come through is just confirmation that we're recording the webinar, and we will aim to post that in the next couple of weeks on the website. Are we planning on sharing the slides as well? I think a lot of people found them useful. Yeah, we can do it. Yes. Fantastic. I guess first question then is, do the hours all have to be clinical? I assume that's practice hours.
I can answer that. If you're employed as a nursing associate, that is clinical nursing associate duties. My previous role was working in the education department. I needed to be a nurse to do that. I wasn't working clinically all of the time, and I've revalidated as the nurse. Sue, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yes, just to give another example as well, because it's really dependent upon your scope of practice and where you are working. I've just recently revalidated as a registered nurse, and as part of that process, I am now working in education, but really as an advisor in education, in standards, and it's all about a regulator. So I would look at that differently as far as my practice is concerned, and to make sure that my scope of practice is relevant, and I've understood and been able to demonstrate how I've learned in that area. So it might be possible that there are colleagues who are nursing associates who might be working in different areas, not just directly in practice giving direct patient care. So that would become your area of practice, that's your scope of practice. I'm mindful that, in fact, we've got an example of somebody on our website who's working in education. So again, their area of practice will be teaching practice, educator practice. So it is slightly different. So it's those type of things that you have to give consideration to.
We also have some very sort of helpful guidance on a practice hours guidance sheet on our website as well, and there's also information on you know, what can count and what can't count. So I'd also recommend that you take a look at our website at the guidance sheet there as well.
Fantastic, thanks guys. Couple of questions from registered students who are studying to become registered nurses, who have already qualified to become or already are nursing associates. So just asking, one asking, do they still need to complete their nursing associate revalidation if they're studying to become a nurse, and also about practice hours, can they be used, can their student experience be used to demonstrate their nursing associate revalidation?
Stephanie, is that something you want to take?
I was hoping you might, Sue.
I can do that one. The challenge we'll always have in this space is that the two professions are different. One is a nursing associate, and you'll be working as practicing as a nursing associate, and the other, you will be a student training to be a registered nurse. And therefore, any hours that you're undertaking as a student nurse are not, they're not counted as part of your nursing associate revalidation. So if you want to maintain your nursing associate revalidation during that time, and your revalidation comes up during that time, then it will be expected that you will be probably doing some bank work, possibly to undertake your nursing associate role, and then those are the hours that can be counted in that space. And then when you get to the end of your of that program, and you get onto the register as a registered nurse, that becomes your second registration. So your first registration is your nursing associate, and your registered nurse would become your second registration. It's really up to you then what you want to keep, whether you want to continue working as a nursing associate or not. So you may let your nursing associate registration lapse and continue with your RN registration going forward within your career, and that's your career development line. So it's really your choices as to the direction of travel that you go. But there is some really useful information available again on our website about that transition, really, whilst you're a student nurse over that period of time, if your revalidation comes in that time. But you do need to count the hours that you have worked as a nursing associate to revalidate as a nursing associate. Is there anything colleagues would like to add to that?
No, I think that's covered that, Sue. I think putting simply is the hours that you count towards your revalidation as a nursing associate needs to be you working as a nursing associate.
Are there any other questions, Mohammed?
Yeah, just one more on if somebody's struggling to meet the requirements towards the end, is there any room for extensions, or can they do anything to help with that, with people struggling with those?
Yeah, I can help with that question. So basically, if you are struggling, we do have different support measures available. I would say that it's best to contact us when your revalidation, at 60 days ahead of your revalidation application due date. So Wendy mentioned earlier that that was Tuesday, the 2nd of November. So we would recommend that you contact us around that time. You can go onto your NMC online account and request an extension, and we can offer an 8-week extension, and that is calculated from your revalidation application due date. Okay, but that is available. Similarly, if you need a reasonable adjustment due to a disability or something like that, you can contact us via our revalidation mailbox. That email is available on our website under our contacts page. but you can contact us and state what help you need, and we might be able to provide the revalidation application in a paper format, and if you're dyslexic and you need things in different fonts or different colour paper, things like that, we can look to provide that in the format that you may need. So yes, we do have different support options available to you. It's best to contact us as far ahead in advance as possible, so that we can put those measures into place for you. But yeah, just contact us.
I think I can add to that is to talk to your employers, to talk to colleagues, and maybe it's not as bad as you might think. You use the opportunity, perhaps if you've got an education department where you work, to pick their brains about how you can be creative about meeting the requirements, particularly thinking about CPD, which I know is a lot of people have been worried about over the last 18 months, because lots of participatory events, classroom events have been cancelled, have not happening because of the pandemic. So there may be other ways to achieve that participatory CPD requirement.
Just to jump in there, Wendy, thanks for that. Something like this would count as a participatory CPD, so you could put this down. Because it's a webinar, because it's participatory, there's opportunities for you to ask questions, have that heard and discussed. So this could definitely count as that. The other support mechanisms which you might not easily think about, but you can call us. We have a call centre, and our call centre is available Monday to Friday, 8 AM to 6 PM, and our call centre agents are trained to answer questions about revalidation. And similarly, again, in the revalidation mailbox that we have, we often get specific questions that people would like some answers to, and we're readily available to answer those as well.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully a quick one. The practice hours, 450 hours, is it over 3 years or only over 1 year?
3 years.
Well, that's, I was going to say, that's the easy question. Yes, definitely 3 years.
Yes.
It can be gained at any point over those 3 years, so it doesn't matter if you've taken a career break or whatever else. It's just specifically within the revalidation period.
Yeah, and sort of related to that, someone's saying that they're going on, or they're on maternity leave now, due to be back at work in October, November time. So does it matter that the majority of their written reflections won't be dated during 2021? They haven't worked since Christmas.
No, that's absolutely fine. The actual revalidation evidence is over the 3 years, and therefore, if all the reflections were done in year one and the hours were done in year one, and then you took maternity leave, and you're only just coming back, then that's the whole point of the hours being set where they are. So it enables that flexibility of being able to demonstrate your practice and also your learning.
Thanks. And another question, does the person you have the reflective discussion with, do they have to be more senior than you?
So I would say that it is helpful for them to be senior to you, certainly not junior to you, because we would wonder whether there's a sort of conflict of interest in some respects if somebody is junior to you or you manage them in some way. So we would say sort of peer-to-peer or senior. And just on another point, conflict of interest. So do make sure that whoever acts as your confirmer is not a family member or close friend, because again, that may be seen as a conflict of interest. and there's information on our website about conflicts of interest. So that's important in your considerations in terms of who you think will be appropriate to act in that capacity for you.
Just on that note, it might be worth mentioning that when you are planning who is going to act as your reflective partner, who's going to do your confirmation, is to make sure that you plan well in advance to have that conversation in your diary, because as we know, things happen, and those diary invites may get missed. So give yourself the opportunity to plan in advance, make sure that the diaries are clear so that you've got that opportunity for conversation, and make sure that you send well in advance the detail to those individuals too, so that they can prepare to maximise their role in supporting you through the revalidation process. And as Wendy was saying during the presentation, that opportunity to have a reflective discussion is really, really helpful and makes you think so differently about your role and the things that you've learned. Linking it to your appraisal works really well. And so planning in advance is a high recommendation from me.
Yeah, just on that theme of planning, someone asking if they've not really made too much progress yet and they're due to revalidate early next year, do they have enough time? How long does it roughly take to gather all that evidence? We should be planning obviously for months, but ideally if they haven't started, is it too late if they're going to revalidate early next year?
I'll take this one. I think the thing to remember is revalidation isn't something that you do to revalidate. It's a reflection of your practice, of what you've done over the last 3 years. So think back, think about what you've done, think about your growth, think about things that you have done that have made a difference. And I think you're probably quite surprised yourself in how much you've probably achieved already. And I think if you've done the practice hours, and if it's a CPD that people are worried about, I think you'll be probably you should be able to fit that in if you're looking from now, between now and November. I mean, thinking about being a bit more creative, if you've attended today, there you are, there's some participatory CPD already. So Sue, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think the whole idea is that from the start of your year, you should be thinking about some of these areas and giving it some consideration. So you should be collecting evidence. And my top tip, again, along with planning in advance with your confirmer, one of my top tips is that whenever you're doing anything like this, whenever you've had an engagement, whenever somebody's said something and giving you feedback, whether it be positive or constructive, then write it down somewhere, have a way of writing it down somewhere, so that you can, even if you don't do anything with it straight away, at the time you do look at it, you've started to gather that evidence. Because there's nothing worse than getting to a point in time and you're sort of then scrabbling for evidence, you can't find things, you can't remember whether you learned anything, and it creates a lot of pressure. So just start simply. If you haven't done that at the moment, start with the practice hours, get your evidence, fill it in. Once you've done that form, you think, right, I'm a step in the right direction, and then move on to the next thing. What CPD have I done over the last 3 years? Where's my evidence for that? Is it participatory? Is it not participatory? And just start to build and log those hours. And remember, it doesn't have to be a formal study day or a formal conference or a formal webinar like we're doing today. It can be that you've learned something when you've been in conversation at the start of a shift, at the end of a shift, during the shift. You may well have been talking about some particular aspect of care that's going on that's been challenging, and how you as a team have overcome it. That is all participatory learning. You're all working together as a team and you're all thinking these things through. Over the last 18 months, we've done quite a lot of interactions through Twitter conversations and online stuff as well, and there's that opportunity to capture that evidence. So think about it, start to log things now in order to get to the time when you want to demonstrate that evidence. And likewise, start to write your reflections. What is it you've done well? What is it you've learned? You know, what is it you've not done so well, and what can you learn from that? You know, these aren't essays, these are one-pagers where you are literally guided by the template that we've got on the website that enables you to say what it was, what you did, what you learned from it, and what are you going to do differently in the future, because it's that latter bit that's really, really helpful to help you develop in your careers.
We also, when we did the pilot study for revalidation, we found that registrants were able to complete with a revalidation within 3 months of being in practice. So I would say that that would be a good marker for you. A few other suggestions in terms of you know, things that tend to come up in terms of frequent questions. I would say to remember that the feedback is practice-related feedback, so it's not necessarily patient-related feedback. So, for example, for the lady who's been on maternity leave, you know, you may not find that you have a lot of patient feedback at this point. That's fine, but it's practice-related feedback. So that also includes colleagues, other peers, and things like that. So think about that one.
Yeah, and sort of related to that point, do we have to work with the person? Do you have to work with the person who you have your reflective discussion with, or could it be a practice nurse from another practice?
Yes, it can be. It can be within your wider network, so it doesn't have to be somebody that you directly work with.
Fantastic. Just a quick confirmation, we can print the templates off that we have on our website. Should be able to. Yeah, I think they're all printer friendly. And just a confirmation on date. So just confirming that the revalidation date, I know you said you can log on to NMC Online and find it out, but it should be from the time you got your PIN, 3 years from that date.
Yes.
Fantastic. And question on with the reflections, do we have to use evidence to reference within them like we do in our essays?
No. If you want to, we're not going to stop you. If it prompts some further reading, that could perhaps be a bit of non-participatory CPD. In fact, the key thing is that, as Sue said earlier, what you did, what you learned, what you're going to do differently next time, and how that relates to the code. I often describe it as those conversations you have in your head when you're walking home from a shift, when your shift plays in the video in your head, and you think, oh, what I really should have done then is, and that's quite a good start for a reflection. So it's not like writing an essay, and I know probably during your training you wrote reflections with footnotes and references and perfectly spelt and perfectly grammatically perfect. This is about your learning and your growth.
I think it's also worth remembering that the reflections are a starting point for your reflective discussion. So there may be things that you want to touch on in your reflection, your reflective accounts, that you will then want to expand on with your discussion, with your reflective discussion partner as well. And also, again, just to refer you back to our website, we do have a guidance booklet, but equally we also have the sort of sections that you can go to. So if you do have questions on the reflective discussion or the reflective accounts, you can sort of click onto the bite-sized piece there to read through that, so it's more manageable if you have questions on specific areas as well.
Fantastic. I don't think there's any more questions coming through, so I don't know if there's anything the panel want to add, or we can leave it there. Steph, you had something?
I did actually, just because there was a couple of things that that cropped up for me in terms of the presentation, and obviously, you know, everybody has been operating within the pandemic over the last 18 months, and so you know, there are things that we have been more flexible on. So, for example, the reflective discussion, we do ask that it's face to face, but obviously if there are circumstances that are difficult, for example, due to the pandemic, we have said to people that you can have that via sort of video conferencing or by phone at the very least, so that, you know, that can be accessible. So that's one thing. So health and character, where you declare cautions or convictions and things like that. What I would say to you is, if we haven't considered it, you must tell us. But thereafter, so for example, if you did have a caution or conviction that you needed to tell us about in your first revalidation, you would do that. If we've then considered that, during your next revalidation, you don't need to tell us about the same thing. It would only be if something's happened that is new that we need to know about. And also equally, you shouldn't necessarily wait for revalidation to tell us. There is the opportunity to get in touch with us sooner than that as well. And also the other thing with verification, so it was mentioned that your registration won't lapse. It won't lapse. However, there is a time limit. So you need to, we can hold your registration effective for up to 3 months beyond your registration expiry date, but we will need to have a full and complete application by the end of those 3 months. Otherwise, we would need to look at closing the application or potentially refusing it. So it is sort of time limited, but you're able to work during that period of time, and yeah, your registration won't lapse within those 3 months. But it is important to know that there is a time limit on that.
Just another quick confirmation on paying for revalidation. I assume it's the same as people have been paying for their fee every year.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and just I don't think any more questions are coming through, but just for posterity and maybe someone who's watching the recording, who's watching this webinar, they can also log watching the webinar as part of their CPD later on, like you're saying. Fantastic.
Yes, that would be participatory.
They wouldn't be participatory. Fantastic. All right, I think that's all for the questions. So handing back over to you to conclude.
Okay. Wendy, what is your top tip?
My top tips are talk to each other. You probably have great support from one another, because I expect lots of you are going through this at the same time. Reflect on your growth. Think about how your experience have shaped you. It's a real opportunity to talk about that and see how far you've come. And I'll say it again, think code and don't panic.
Thank you. Stephanie, have you got anything?
Yeah, I would say get in touch with us at the earliest opportunity if you have any questions or you need any help. We are there to help. We do have a lot of answers to a lot of questions that you may have or circumstances that you find yourself in. What I would say is that we give you the absolute maximum support that we possibly can from the outset. So if for any reason we do say no, it's because there is no further that we can possibly go, but we always go as far as we can to give you as much support as possible. And the earliest that you contact us, the better we are able to serve you.
Okay, thank you. I think there's some great tips, and I've shared a couple of mine already. I just want to say thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And you know, we are here to support you. It's important as a regulator that we do have systems like this in place. It's important that, you know, as part of that process is about protecting the public, but it's also about making sure we provide you with the right support to provide that safe and effective practice that all the people we provide services to will expect. So thank you all very much for joining us. You know where we are, you've seen all the details. Please access the website. There's so much information on there. If you're not already registered up to the receive the actual nursing newsletters, again, get on the website, do a quick search, find the newsletter page and register so you get regular information from us. Sometimes it might feel like a bit of overload, but we do want to talk to you and we do want your feedback as well on these things. So that's helpful for our revalidation too, isn't it? But there you go. So thank you very much. Thank you, Wendy, greatly for the presentation, and Stephanie for joining us on questions. And more importantly, we've got Mohammed in the background doing this fantastic IT work, and collating those questions like you did was absolutely superb. So once again, thank you all, and have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.